A CIA memo reveals a concerning spike in intelligence losses 6 months after Trump acquired the secret files, which were taken out of Mar-a-Lago, and were reportedly able to be used to identify intelligence assets. A 7-year-old in Arizona brought ammunition and 2 handguns into his second-grade class today, and a Canadian scaffolding company told workers that they must voluntarily accept overtime or go to jail. Life expectancy dropped for the second straight year, now to its lowest levels since 1996. And Alex Jones admitted that he hears voices and that they feed him conspiracy theories, which he now acknowledges are fake. But thankfully, he says he got it under control, before announcing that Antifa is planning to take over the country in the next 71 days. Tonight, however, we won't be discussing any of these things. This is Overtime.
In the next 71 days, we're going to see some very violent fireworks. I would predict racially motivated mass shootings, bombings, poisonings, attacks on power supplies being blamed on the right wing. They intend to bring in a full dictatorship in the next 71 days. And we are all strapped to this thing. This is such a dangerous time. And I would advise the globalists who are mid-level that think they're about to have a leftist revolution. The globalists don't actually plan at the higher levels to have that. They plan on having a civil war that brings down America, and you'll be the fall guy.
Welcome to Overtime. With me today is 𝐒𝐸𝐿𝐴𝐸𝐸𝐸, and while those are important stories, you can find everything you need to know about them on our Discord. We are following them, and we'll discuss them as needed. We may have a number of interesting shows coming up. We expect a busy couple of weeks. However, there is an unprecedented number of countries struggling with environmental disasters this week, all at the same time. In the U.S., we have flooding in the South, drought in the West and Midwest, with a massive demand on the U.S. power grid at a time when we can really least afford to try to generate new power, at least using coal. The U.S. is just one of dozens of countries struggling with climate emergencies right now in what one climatologist called the largest sequence of exceptional disasters in human history. 5 floods, each a 1 in 1,000 year event, have struck the U.S. in the last 5 weeks. Biden today approved an emergency declaration in Mississippi after flooding has rendered the water in Jackson undrinkable, cutting off access to safe water for nearly 170,000 Mississippi residents. These residents had actually already been under a boil advisory for roughly a month, but now the water is so dangerous, boiling it will not make it safe, and state and local officials have advised them not even to use it to brush their teeth. There's also been record flooding in Japan and South Korea, but that's not the worst of it. Over 1,100 people are dead, and more than 33 million have been affected by catastrophic flooding in Pakistan. NASA's MODIS satellite has detected a new lake in Pakistan, roughly 60 miles wide, wiping out agricultural fields used in the production of food. Roughly 1/3 of the entire country of Pakistan is now underwater, with over 500,000 people displaced as a record-breaking monsoon season struck the country. Pakistan's foreign minister said that the number of people affected by this is greater than the population of Australia, saying, quote, "While we understand the new reality of climate change means more extreme weather or monsoons, more extreme heat waves like earlier this year, the scale of the current flood is one of apocalyptic proportions. We certainly hope it is not a new climate reality." While a number of countries are in fact seeing historic flooding, others are seeing massive droughts. China issues its first has issued its first national drought emergency. New Scientist called this, quote, the most severe heat wave ever recorded, and that this has been hailed as the most severe heat wave ever anywhere on the planet. Huge swaths of China are suffering the effects of record-breaking heat now for nearly 2 months. Quote, this combines the most extreme intensity with the most extreme length, with an incredibly huge area, all at the same time. There is nothing in world climatic history which is even minimally comparable to what is happening now in China. In many places in China, the temperature has regularly exceeded 104 degrees Fahrenheit and has hit a record 113 degrees. On August 20th, the lowest temperature in Chongqing was 95 degrees, breaking a record for the highest low temperature ever recorded. Subway stations are now being set up as emergency shelters. 66 rivers have dried up completely in China, and rivers like the Yangzi River, the third largest river in the world, by the way, are now at the lowest they've ever been since records started in 1865. Sichuan, I think is how it's pronounced, which gets 80% of its power from hydroelectricity, is one of the many areas now suffering power loss. Between the heat and the inability to water crops, over 40,000 hectares of crops have been lost in that region and 500,000 more destroyed. 48,000 were lost and 500,000 have been damaged. Meanwhile, Europe is facing the worst drought in at least 500 years. The Loire, the longest river in France, is moving slower than at any time in recorded history and can now be crossed by foot in some places. The Danube has warmed so much that oxygen levels are expected to fall below the level needed for trout to even survive in the river. Italy's longest flowing river is only at 1/10 the usual rate, and Italy is expected to lose up to 60% of their corn and rice production for the year and have lost 30% of their clam crop. But that's not the worst of it. The Rhine River, the 760-mile river, which flows from Switzerland through the Netherlands, Germany, and France to Rotterdam, is, and ultimately ends at the North Sea, is the central hub for most European commerce. The middle and upper Rhine have now been closed to barges. The level is too low for them to safely use the river. They've been closed to barges from the 15th, and it is anticipated that very soon they will be closing the river to all traffic. In 2018, there was a 6-month closure of the river, and Germany alone lost over $5 billion in commerce just from that closure. Water coolers in French nuclear power plants use the water from the Rhine, and as the levels have fallen, they've had to reduce their power output because they cannot keep their nuclear plants cool. Netherlands is also facing a similar problem. The U.S. is bracing for its own heat wave, expected in the coming week, already in the grips of what has been called the worst drought in over 1,000 years. Parts of Southern California, including Sacramento and the San Joaquin Valley. Temperatures are expected to hit 115 degrees and to exceed 120 degrees in Death Valley. California is considering naming and ranking heat waves in the future, same as we do for hurricanes. Officials in Southern California have advised people now that they should be staying indoors because of the smog risk that is caused by the increase in temperature. But this will, in turn, of course, create a greater demand for electricity, which the state is also saying is going to have to be rationed. The Department of Water and Power has called for a 35% reduction in the use of water for the city of Los Angeles. The Sierra Nevada snowpack, which supplies many Southern California cities, is now at just 4% of its normal size. Many towns are beginning to enact strict water usage regulations. In fact, in Southern California, outdoor watering makes up 70% of the average consumer's water usage. One of the reasons for this is because it's all basically mud out there. It's desert. And wildfires become a huge problem if you don't keep all of the vegetation well maintained with copious amounts of water. And it's the only thing that keeps mudslides from coming in and wiping entire cities off the map. They vegetate all along the hills, and that's the only thing that keeps them intact. However, at this point, it looks like California will not be able to afford that water. In Southern California, outdoor watering makes up 70% of the average consumer's water usage. Grass is the single most irrigated, quote, crop in the United States. Even more so than corn or wheat. Residents are being asked to water their lawns no more than 1 day a week and are being assigned alternating days on which they are permitted to water their grass, and they can do so for no more than 8 minutes. Considering the severity of the problem, California is not only heavily fining people who violate these new regulations by, say, watering their lawns, but is now implementing restrictors on repeat offenders. The restrictors are metal plates which are placed in the water meter, and they're just these plates that have a little hole in them and reduce the amount of water flow, typically going from the 25 or 30 gallons per minute that the average California resident gets to down to as little as 1 gallon per minute. Idaho, Montana, and Nevada are facing dangerous temperature increases, and Boise, Idaho has had an average temperature of 80 degrees for August, the highest average for that month since record-keeping began in 1875. Oregon Governor Katie Brown declared a state of emergency on Sunday due to the imminent threat of wildfire as a result of the dry conditions. Hydroelectric power accounts for almost 1/3 of all of U.S. renewable energy, roughly 6% of the total amount of electrical generation in this country. However, in the face of this historic drought, Lake Mead, which feeds the Hoover Dam, is at record low levels. It has declined so much that electrical generation has already been reduced by about half. The dead pool, which is the pool, it's essentially the quote pool at the bottom of the dam. Once you are down to the dead pool level, yes, there's water there, but it is below what the dam can use to actually operate and generate electricity. The dead pool level is the level at which the dam must necessarily shut off, and in fact requires power in order to pump that water through. The dead pool for the Hoover Dam stands at 950 feet above sea level. The current elevation of Lake Mead is now 1,040 feet above sea level, roughly 90 feet away from the dead pool level. The Bureau of Reclamation predicts that half of that 90 feet could be gone in the next 18 months, leaving the lake only 40 feet above the dead pool level. This has prompted for the first time ever, a Tier 1 shortage declared along the Colorado River, forcing water cuts for Arizona, Nevada, and even all the way down to Mexico. Federal officials have already declared that a Tier 2 water shortage will begin immediately starting next year, which has been igniting a controversy as states argue over which ones are receiving disproportionate cuts and which ones have the greatest need of the water coming from the Colorado River. Meanwhile, the Glen Canyon Dam is now only 44 feet from the dead pool. Around the world, people have been asking if this is the result of climate change, if that has been influencing this. Scientists have answered with a resounding yes, that climate change is indeed fueling this. They have also said that this is just the beginning. And I think it's interesting. We here at In Time have been covering very important local matters, including possible charges of treason against the former president of the United States, insurrection, and a country 50% of which believes we will have a civil war in the next 2 years. Obviously, Ukraine is extraordinarily important, but we decided tonight we were going to cover something that, while you can find in mainstream media, especially New York Times and Associated Press and Reuters have been covering this, it hasn't gotten a lot of play and has been absolutely astonishing. We'd like to also show you a couple of photographs and discuss some of the footage that you've been watching in the center window there. I think perhaps the most important one is Lake Mead. You can see the rings there from where the water level normally is. That water level has gone down so far. It is only 90 feet from the dead pool, another 90 feet of loss, and that dam will no longer be able to operate. This is Jackson City in Mississippi, and this as well is actually, yeah, I think that is as well. And then to go over some of the footage that we've been playing, and we'll continue to play, and then I think Xandring and I are going to have a discussion on this, but let's take a look at, so what you're seeing now is Pakistan. Again, 1/3 of the entire country is now underwater. It is reaching the levels of perhaps the single largest humanitarian crisis on the planet today, which is saying something. We'll show you a few more of Pakistan, but we also wanted to show you, this is from The Guardian, that is the 3rd largest river in the planet. It is the Yangzi River in China. As you can see, in fact, why don't we, I think this is probably worth bringing up here. This is a before and after. You can see August 2015, and the levels were already dropping at that point. Compared to August 2022. A number of you, if you've been following, and you can see this on our Discord, a number of interesting things have been coming up as the water levels go down. This is a Buddhist statue, which is believed not to have been seen in about 600 years. Which would mean, yeah, basically the last time that the water levels were this low would have been 600 years ago. And we're finding boats, in one case in Europe, they found warheads that had not detonated, that had landed in the river, and so much of the river water has receded that they have actually found undetonated munitions from World War II. And then what we have here as well is we're going to show some of the wildfires that are being caused by the extreme drought conditions. And then this is Jackson. This is from about 1 week ago, this particular one. Again, in Jackson right now, there's no source of clean water. They've been handing out potable and non-potable water to residents, roughly 170,000 of which do not have access to clean water. As bad as this is, it's obviously still significantly better than Pakistan. Also, Seoul, South Korea, has been having severe flooding, as has Japan. Again, in the U.S., that's 5 once in 1,000 year rain events that have occurred in the last 5 weeks. I think the first thought that I think of, there was a movie called The Day After Tomorrow, and in it, basically, overnight, the weather dramatically changes in the United States, and the cause of this is basically it hits a tipping point. The Gulf Stream suddenly changes direction. And, within just a couple of days, the whole global weather system changes dramatically. I don't think that's what we're looking at. And so I think it's important to realize that we're not trying to say that, wow, gee, overnight, all of a sudden, everything's changed, but we haven't been covering this, and I think in part we're used to, we've covered floods before, we've covered some pretty serious stuff before, but this is the first time that we've had multiple, that I'm aware of, crises, and this is Pakistan that you're about to see. The hotel there on the bottom in the middle is about to collapse. There's been some other really pretty difficult footage of families having to be rescued and not always successfully. Pakistan is just unbelievable suffering, and this has never happened to them. Europe is going through a drought that has never happened to them. China is going through a drought that appears never to have happened to any country at any time in human history. And the U.S. is bracing for what we believe next week will be a record heat wave coming through the U.S. So, Germany exports electricity. So, and one of the problems Germany is facing is Germany gets most of their energy resources from Russia, and they have, in my view, I'm not an expert, but in my view, from what I've been seeing, they have been as gracious as possible in trying to get off of that, and recognizing that they are highly dependent on it, but they also oppose what's happening in Ukraine, putting them in an extraordinarily difficult position. But now the problem is energy is also shipped on the Rhine, and they're going to be losing that. Nuclear power is we think of nuclear power as, hey, great, it'll survive all of this, but the problem is it needs regular water to be able to run, and those resources are drying up. So there is some very serious problems. And then the other problem, of course, is going to be food. We're looking at huge crop losses. We've listed particularly the ones in Italy, which has been hit hard. But I think this year it's going to be bad. But if next year this starts earlier, or if this gets any worse, I think we're going to be looking at some extraordinarily serious problems worldwide coming up. This is not the day after tomorrow, at least not to the best of my understanding. This isn't, all of a sudden now everything is the whole global pattern has changed in one fell swoop. But what this is the undeniable fact that we have gone way further than we ever should have in regards to climate change. And at this point, I don't see that the catastrophic effects of this can possibly be denied anymore. So that's where we stand. 𝐒𝐤𝐬𝐿 is here with us. Thank you, sir, for waiting. And you're looking at this and hearing this. And what are your thoughts?
There be some weather out there.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah.
Just a little. The interesting thing, it's, I guess, a quibbling point, but they're like, we've never seen drought like this. This river's never been that low. Oh, look at all of the Buddhist temples that are now reemerged. It's like, well, at some point the river must have been that low, or they would have built Buddhist temples there.
Okay, fair. A little bit of a dick move, but fair.
Well, I mean, it is what it is. But and we have,
okay, it's a 600-year-old
like
Buddhist temple, asshole.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a hot minute. Literally a hot minute. But and we have other weather issues going on too. Like we got like a double El Nino going on at the same time, which is influencing a lot of the heat and patterns in the United States as well. Well, we've had these before, somewhat recently, and the conditions didn't get this bad. So it's like when we start seeing some of these convergence of different weather patterns, and it seems the effects are becoming more extreme. So yeah, it's something you got to watch out for. I think they found 3 bodies now that have surfaced in Lake Mead. They found a World War II boat, plus all the other boats that are out there. They've been finding tons of other boats that have sunk.
Yep. They're finding them in the Great Lakes too. They're just finding all these boats that are just down at the bottom, and they've now, I think, in one of the Great Lakes, they've opened up 3 separate homicide investigations based on bodies that were found at the bottom of the lake that had hands tied behind the packs and the whole 9 yards. Like, ooh, we have ourselves a homicide. Oh, and drums. They found a number of drums with bodies in the drums. So, yeah. Titan said this quote. I have to credit him. I'd love to. Can I get a sound check from you real quick?
I can hear you.
No, I needed you to just say anything or do anything, and you just you split second cleared your throat. I'm just asking for those when that sound kicks in. So let's see. The Titan had said this. I love, Alex Jones found guilty, and all this other stuff. He just doesn't learn. He just doesn't learn. In 71 days, apparently, he's tapped into the he's tapped into whatever it is that's, whatever Antifa source that is tipping him off to all this garbage. But, now that he's been found guilty, gay frogs have, we read a statement from gay frogs that have issued a sigh of relief as Alex Jones was found guilty of. I don't know how many gay frogs there are, but I'm sure Alex Jones will tell me. Anyways, I'm sorry. So you were saying? Oh, you there?
Can you hear me?
Oh, there you are.
Yeah, for some reason, out of the blue, I'm having a spot and hard here.
Yeah, you definitely are breaking up a bit.
Well, a minute, please.
Yeah. Why don't I? I'll talk for a minute, and then we'll hopefully you'll be cleared up by then. Somebody mentioned, I think supply chain issues. I mean, the reality is we already have pretty serious supply chain issues. The impact on the world food supply by what's been going on in Ukraine has been measurable. It affects other countries, some countries more than others, but it's been measurable. And now we have other significant threats to the food chain. This is going to have an impact on all of us. Even if you happen to be in an area that isn't being affected by extreme weather, which is those areas are getting smaller and smaller by the minute. The reality is what's happened over the last 4 to 8 weeks is going to affect every living person on this planet. We are so interconnected, and we are so dependent on food. The number of crops getting wiped out, the number of countries that are now going to have to ration their energy, and the number of countries that, as of this moment, have either some or full emergency declaration as a result of the weather is unprecedented. And it's the gay frog thing. So anyways, how's your sound there doing, Xandring? I told Xandring to get a solar powered headset, but he refused. Yeah, capitalist. Oh, well, I'm going to get a solar powered headset when it's economically the best incentive. Yeah. I think what we should do is, I think we're going to have a new policy that whenever there's technical problems on this show, we blame the nearest applicable Canadian, which is usually Neil 604. He's not usually in the audience, but we blame him anyway. From now on, I think any weather-related catastrophe or event, it's Xandring's fault because he refused to get solar-powered headsets. That's going to be my position. I'm quite comfortable with that position. I may get a little less comfortable with that position once he can hear me. I'm assuming that he can't hear this part of the conversation right now. If he can, I'll deal with it. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Hopefully he doesn't have a replay button. Oh, dear Lord.
Oh, I can hear you.
Whoa! Hey, how's it going? Was my mic on? I was just vamping. Hold on a second. I know. It's comedy routine. It's
Yep.
That's all.
Yep. I'll remember that.
All right. So you were saying before all these technical difficulties came up from Neil's side of the aisle. You there?
I don't remember what I was saying.
Well, first you were making fun of people who say it's never been this low, but pointing out that there was a Buddhist statue that was 600.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's oh yeah, because when we start getting some of these weather events, like we're having a double El Nino, I think it is.
Yep.
But we have El Ninos and La Ninas all the time, and the effects of these are starting to get a lot more extreme. So, I mean, we're suffering from one now, which is probably what's leading to a lot of the super record breaking. But it's like we're going to be seeing those records get broken in more often when we have these events.
Yeah, you and I were talking a couple of days ago about this, and it's like, we have these conversations about where we think the U.S. stands in terms of the likelihood of a civil war, and some of this is just two assholes shooting the shit talking about it. But on the flip side, we do have sources beyond in time that we don't normally dox for obvious reasons. But we also have sources that are experts in this kind of thing. Commander-at-Lance McMillan, obviously, being one of them, who we discussed this with in public. And it's what these people say is very concerning. So you and I were talking about, okay, well, we're talking about a potential civil war in the U.S. We're talking about now an unprecedented global emergency, what appears to be emerging. And it gets very hard not to get doomer about it. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are you should listen to what's going on in the world, verify what's going on with other sources, and use this as information to plan your life around. You shouldn't be panicking. You shouldn't be going, oh my God, it's the end of the world and I feel fine, I guess. So you should be using this for information so that you can, be prepared for the future. Maybe stick an extra month of shelf-stable food away in case you have a natural disaster in your area. You should be using this to inform your actions and, not getting panicked and running around like Chicken Little. So, remember that it's the world, and the world has survived for a very long time with humans in it, and it will continue to survive, especially in your lifetime. So, don't panic, but be aware that there's possibly some pretty severe weather coming up. There maybe we'll have some economic times. We're seeing, hints at possible, populist uprisings. Not necessarily, I wouldn't go quite so far as to say civil war, though we're dangerously closer than we've probably been since the actual Civil War.
For fuck's sake. I'm not going to say civil war. I'm going to say a populist uprising behind a 600-year-old Buddhist temple that proves that the river has been that low because we got on to, okay. Little Mr. Nitpick to it's not a civil war because the country, the states aren't fighting them. It's a populist uprising. I will be sure to tell the guy at my door with AR-15. I will be sure to tell him that. But anyways, please continue.
Yeah, let's see how far that gets you. But this isn't a civil war. It's just a populist up.
Exactly.
All we heard was a loud bang, and that was the most we heard from him. So. Yeah, no, I always, because I follow a bunch of people too that are in like the prepper world, and they're just going nuts about a lot of this stuff with the doomer porn. And it's like, that doesn't help anybody. It's like, yeah, there's some things going on. There's some things you should probably pay attention to, there, and you should use this information to inform your actions going forward. Do what you can to secure yourself. Make sure, expect that there's probably going to be some hard times coming on because every generation deals with their hard times. And use it to prepare yourself and stop living your life in fear. Get behind some of your charities and your
if you say and start spending money so that we can boost the economy. You know what? I'm just gonna like. Sorry, I'm making fun of the.
Yeah, that's not gonna work.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
I don't think we have enough money to spend to save the economy, but that's just kind of a personal thing. Things will reset. You see lots of times where we have to have a bit of a uprising, a bit of a crash or whatever to try and normalize things again, and things have gotten pretty crazy. So usually it's not exactly pleasant when things normalize. So just keep in mind that there's some bad things going on. It's not the end of the world yet, and live your life.
I remember when the overturning of Roe v. Wade was the biggest news we had. So yeah, I think that's I appreciate that, and I think that's important. I think you know, on some level, poor example, but I think it's worth understanding. If California, we're trying to look at the numbers in California because from what I can tell, and I'm not sure of this. This is speculation. We're trying to do multiple deep dives at this point on this show on multiple subjects. We are by no means done with Trump. We still have some things we're trying to get into both on Ukraine and with Russian meddling in the previous election, let alone where we're going in the future. But from what I'm looking at, it seems to me that the water limiters that we covered earlier, that they're talking about putting in place in order to physically restrict people who are violating the new water restrictions, which they anticipate will be no more than 7% of the population. But they do point out a lot of it's going to be the celebrities, Hollywood, Beverly Hills, that has been flouting these for quite some time, and everybody's just like, look, you expect it. They're like, that's done. That has to be done, which means Hollywood's going to leave. Hollywood is going to leave. The stars can live anywhere they want to. If the restrictions are what it looks like they're going to be, I think they're going to leave. But these limiters, I've seen some suggestion that the limiters were actually previously suggested as should already be mandatory across the entire state. And as a compromise solution, what they said was, no, we'll only put the limiters on houses that are for third-time violations of the water restrictions. Now, first of all, the actual way that they're going to be doing this is people are going to be ratting out their neighbors and yada yada yada, and that's I got some issues with that, but I think we're probably beyond quibbling on those. But if that's really the case, that suggests to me that the thinking of the people who know what's going on in California is that these restrictions are really only the beginning, and I can't fathom if they really try to restrict California down from 25 to 35 gallons per minute down to at the lowest level with the highest restrictor 1 gallon per minute per household. It's very hard to see how California as a state continues to operate. Most of that's going to go back to desert. I imagine some people will still live there. There are people who live in some of the most desert areas in the U.S. already. But
look at Phoenix.
Yeah. But
Phoenix and Las Vegas only exist because of piped-in water. So, if the water were to dry up and they really couldn't feasibly get water to those areas, those cities would become ghost towns. Because they only survive because of the water they can ship to them. And Las Vegas at least had Lake Mead up by it, and now there's some issues with Lake Mead. There's some troubling things, and some areas where there's going to be some pretty big challenges. And one of the things with just human psychology is if somebody never had anything, then they're a hell of a lot more content than if you give them something and then take it away.
Yep.
This is very well known. I mean, the government knows this very well. That's why that's why the joke is, there's nothing so permanent as a temporary government program. It's like once you get it in and get it moving, well, you can't just take it away, because people get really, really upset when you start taking things away. We saw a lot of this back in 2007 when we had a lot of the financial issues, and Greece putting in bank holidays and just pulling people's money out of their account to help pay their debt. And it caused huge numbers of riots. Anytime you take things away from people, even if it's just the perception you're taking something away, people get really angry. So the people with the resources that will just leave that situation and go someplace else, and it's the people who don't have the ability to just pick up and move at a drop of a hat that are going to suffer for it. So they need to do some planning and really do an honest assessment of what may be coming, because if it's true that essentially they really need all of this limitation put statewide or in these areas completely wide instead of just the people that are, flagrantly violating it, then they need to start acting now versus putting it off until it's, at a crisis point where we're like, okay, well, now everybody's going to have to go down to just a gallon per minute. And that's just simply your flow rate because we've reached a point where that's the only option, then that's a really bad public policy. It's like when you start seeing issues like this early on and you're like, okay, this could get really bad. We need to start making changes now, which are very, very unpopular. It's really hard to get politicians to do that because it's going to create a backlash. Well, you're taking things away from us and we're mad about that. It's like, yeah, but it's going to get so much worse if we don't start doing things now. It's kind of the entire argument about, global warming. It's like, wait a minute, we kind of need to be doing things now before it becomes extreme enough that we only have one option. So you don't want to get to those points. So you want to pay attention and do the hard parts and actually get in there and say, no, this is the reality of the situation, and this is what really needs to happen. And then that's the only way you're going to try and not get to a kind of a worst case scenario. And we have such a bad history throughout all of human history of trying to mitigate things. We tend to just adapt after the fact, even though we could have seen this coming and should have seen this coming. We somehow don't, or we do, but don't see a way that we can really fix it because it's going to cause a lot of backlash if we try to fix it now until it gets to the point where it all blows up. And, that's never a good plan. There's much better plans, and we should be trying to push for those.
So let's just because it's breaking. Yeah, Sarah Palin did in fact. Thank you, Andreas. Sarah Palin has in fact lost in the special election. It was I think because it's I think they had to do a runoff because nobody had over 50, so they had to continue to today. But Sarah Palin has lost and will not be a member of Congress for the remainder of the year. So that's Titan just posted that in the breaking news. But credit where credit is due. Bregwin, who manages to beat most mainstream media, had that on the Discord over 90 minutes ago. I had that on the Discord an hour and 15 minutes ago. I have no idea how Bregwin does this. It's just, so join us on the Discord.
Psychic.
Bregwin just
reaches into the future.
I know.
Just reaches into the future, picks up the headlines, drops them in just as it breaks. It's like, okay, this looks into the future. Okay, at 6:59, this is going to happen. So at 6:58, I'm going to grab the headline, and then right as it hits, I'll just drop it in the.
It's a little spooky.
It's wizardry.
It is. And sometimes I know how and where it comes from, and sometimes I'm just like, where the fuck did you? I have no idea, but she gets it. Yep. All right. So
this level of wizardry is now making me believe that one of these lakes is going to dry up, and we're going to find a dragon, and then in 10 years we're going to be living out Reign of Fire.
Oh dear Lord. Oh. Now you're really getting doomer. Thank you. Well, heard it here first,
I never understood
folks.
That movie. If you haven't seen Reign of Fire, it's entertaining. Go watch it. But I'm sorry, but the world's militaries would wipe out dragons pretty fast. So I don't think you have to worry about dragons annihilating the world.
All right, how do you know? Are you an expert on dragons? Do you know how
Didn't
thick?
You know?
That's right, you are. I forgot, actually. You actually, because we had that thing about whether or not dragons are kosher or not. And I really feel like they should be, but I lost the argument. And I'm really embarrassed to be losing the argument on the kosherness of a mythical animal. But since unicorns are in fact mammals, I guess we do need to settle these things. All right, so yep. All right, so I do want to start to wrap this up. We are hoping to have Commander McMillan on tomorrow. He will be continuing his he had a 4-week contract on off time, which I think we're going to be renaming downtime. I think that's much better. But at any rate, he gave us 4 weeks. It's been a marvelous 4 weeks, but he is willing to continue to come and but he may have complications in the next couple of weeks. So we'll see. We'll get it sorted out. We'll make sure that we bring him on, and we do have a few other things that we're going to need to cover. But I think just to finish up where
So what
we left,
you're saying?
yes.
So what you're saying is that N-Time comes with side effects that may cause complications. So we should probably start putting a disclaimer. I'm pretty sure if you have side effects, you're required to list those.
Yeah, we have a disclaimer. The first disclaimer we have that we put at the top of every single show is don't trust us for like a informed opinion on absolutely any topic whatsoever. So we just put that disclaimer out there.
I can't help but notice that he's been doing these with you, and he's having complications after that.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is it that you're doing that's
what
causing
is it that
complications in our guests?
Well, I don't know. We haven't done the study. But side effects. Side effects includes a sudden increase in the purchase of $400 suits, increased bickering, and there's any number of side effects to regularly watching the show. But ay, dear Lord. So, but I wanted to make sure that we covered. Yeah, it's kind of a poor example, but the idea of listen, we still live in, for all intents and purposes, essentially the best time to be alive as a human being. This is not the Dark Ages. This is not the Middle Ages. It's not threatening to go back there, and anybody in modern America is living about as comfortably as any human being ever has on this planet. So it's, and somebody had asked this earlier, like, oh my God, what do I do? What do we do about this? The reason we have these shows is to inform our audience, because everybody, and I mean everybody, who works on In Time at every level genuinely believes in education as about one of the most important tools that you have at your disposal. And, somebody had said, well, gee, do we just pack up and move? I'm not sure I'd advise just packing up and moving. I would advise considering it. I've been advising considering it to people for a while. I don't know where you live. I don't know what's going on in your neck of the woods. I know that what's going on across the world is a little scary, and there's a lot going on. But really, the Suitor clan has been thinking for a while, Jesus, do we even want to stay in the U.S.? What's the likelihood of a revolution or a civil war, and that we're going to get stuck in it? If we do stay in the U.S., where do we want to be? And we haven't picked up and moved, but it's also been, when we talk about what jobs we're looking for in the future, we're thinking about what is the world going to look like in 10 years, and where do we want our kids to land on that? And we make fewer and fewer choices in our day-to-day lives without considering those things. So I'm not going to tell anybody what to do, except one thing I am going to highly recommend, which is be as informed as you can about what's going on around you, and then keep that in mind. Don't succumb to wish thinking, and don't sit there and say, well, other people are going to solve this problem, and this problem isn't coming to me. This problem will affect all of us. It's already affecting a huge number of us. It is affecting a lot of people who don't have the ability. And it's going to do what these things always do. They affect the people who can least afford it first. If we stay to the pattern of history, the wealthiest among us are going to say, it's not really a me problem, so I'll pay it lip service and we won't. And that's kind of how we got where we are now. And I don't see that necessarily changing anytime soon. So I think holding your
we do have the one Hail Mary.
Oh, yes. What is that?
Because the wealthy did at one point in history save essentially the country. They saved the stock market and stuff. I mean, they kind of did it because of self-interest, but they did shell out quite a bit of money to try and shore up our economy, so we didn't have another depression. So I mean, it has happened, but that was like once in how many crises? So I mean, there is a faint hope that maybe the wealthy will get together and say, yeah, this is a big problem, and we have the wealth to be able to solve, or at least stabilize. But I've always kind of lived my life as I don't expect somebody to save me. They're not coming to help me, so I better be able to help myself. And, I think that it behooves everybody to kind of have at least, I grew up a Boy Scout, the model of the Boy Scouts, or I was a Boy Scout growing up, I should say. And the model of the Boy Scouts is be prepared. And I'm not saying go out and buy a bunker and then, put 20 years worth of, shelf-stable foods in your bunker, and then at the first sign of anything going on near you, fleeing to your bunker. You can't really live in a bunker. Cabin fever is a real thing, and it will kill you. Or rather, it will cause you to kill everybody else. So, but be aware of the things that are going on. Think about what you want to do in the future. If you have children, think about what kinds of problems are going to need to be solved in the future, and kind of see if you can garner some interest in your children in that area. I'm sure there's going to be some environmental sciences that are going to be needed in the future, because we're not going to, the ship is going and we can't turn it. And, we can start to turn the rudder at this point, but if all of the scientists are, even if I cut all their predictions in half, there's still going to be significant, weather pattern changes, and it's going to cause a lot of upheaval. You're going to have a lot of people trying to move to different areas because, some areas that used to be lush and producing are going to become barren deserts. Some areas that were deserts are not particularly hospitable are going to be the new breadbaskets. These things shift over time naturally, and now with a lot of the human activity, this is probably accelerated. So, some of these shifts are going to be happening a lot faster than they normally would. Keep abreast of what's going on. Be informed. Let it inform your decisions in the future. Realize that there are probably going to be some difficult times ahead, and see what you can do. Maybe put off some luxuries today to try and put back some needs for tomorrow. Don't panic. You still have a life to live, and you should live it. Get involved with the groups that are pushing messages and doing works that you support. It's like I've always maintained that you need to be the change you wish to see in the world. It's like, don't expect somebody else to change the world. That's up to you.
Hold on, sorry, I was Sinister is making Fallout references, and
I wish I'm in a new truck and stuff, so I don't have everything set up. I just moved into this new truck because mine got hit, so it's going into the shop for a couple of weeks. And I picked up a company truck, and so I just dumped all my stuff in this truck. Well, I have nothing set up, so it's like I can't see the live chat. I can't see how many people are making fun of me. It's annoying.
So keep
it
in
always
mind,
makes my day when people make fun of me.
Keep in mind, Isandering cannot see the live chat, so nobody say any jokes about Isandering. Don't talk about how we're trying to turn him into a lefty commie. Don't talk about him being.
You gotta save all that stuff for when I can actually see the live chat, because that just it entertains me. It's my it's my pick me up for the day. You're thinking about me. Thank you.
All right. So as I said, we're gonna stay on it. We're staying on a lot. So I think letting an awareness of the difficulties that we are facing on multiple fronts, local and abroad, is probably worth it. That's why I'm very glad that we can do this show and try to make as many people as informed as possible. We decided that this this has been going on for several weeks now, and it's been getting worse, and it's going to affect everybody, and we haven't seen a lot of emphasis on it in mainstream news. So,
yeah, we don't see, especially when it's stuff happening overseas, like the floods in Pakistan, the droughts and stuff in China. The United States doesn't generally, unless it's a big, oh my God, blood is flying everywhere. We don't see a whole lot of coverage usually of the rest of the world and some of the problems that are going on in the rest of the world. It's like, how many places are covering the collapse of Sri Lanka? You just don't see it. And yet these places matter because we have a global economy. We have, goods are being shipped all across the globe. Our food chains are now spread out all across the globe. So if you have a country that, like Ukraine, for example, that produces an enormous amount of wheat, and now they're having really bad times trying to get any wheat exported out, that affects the whole world now. So, one of the things that I've always kind of liked about this program is that they did keep an eye on things going on overseas, because those things do affect us. I know we like to think, or at least many Americans like to think, that we're the center of the world and what happens everywhere else doesn't affect us, yet it actually does. It's hard for the rest of the world to affect us to the point of Fallout 4, except for Putin, I guess, maybe. But it does have an effect on us here. It's obviously, pay attention to places like Sri Lanka, pay attention to sub-Saharan Africa and some of the areas through the Congo, and Somalia. Those areas actually matter, because they're the bellwether, the canary in the coal mine. When things are going to start getting rough, they're going to get rough for poor countries first, because they can't afford to just pay their way out of their problems, whereas generally the first world nations can. So problems that start really cropping up amongst a lot of the poor nations, you can start expecting to see problems in the United States too, and you need to take that information and plan your lives accordingly. Try and do what you can to mitigate your own personal tragedies. You don't want to be suffering those, and do your best to get through. We have for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and I'm confident that we will for thousands more years. We just sometimes it takes some pretty drastic and tragic things happening for a shift in mindset. So what is the running theory for sci-fi, that the people of Earth won't ever be able to really unite together until something outside of Earth threatens it?
Yeah.
So it takes hard times to bring people back together, and bring them together to solve problems and to get through and to shift the mindset. And unfortunately, since we can see a lot of these things coming, we're not particularly great at proactively trying to stop some of these things, but we've been historically very good at adapting to them. So I don't believe it'll be the end of the world, but it definitely could be a shift that we're living through. So may you live in interesting times.
I'm going to start muting you when you say that. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. And like I said, we'll keep everyone updated on various information as we have it. Right now, at least, we brought this to light. And with luck, we're hoping to have off time tomorrow night, where we will be having Commander McMillan back on. And maybe we'll see if Mowdy, and did I make it in time? It's the end of the show, James. He really could produce for us. James has the perfect awareness of space-time that we need for a producer of this show. It would be raising the bar significantly. All right. Thank you all for joining us. And we'll be on the Discord. And sorry, what?
I was going to say anything would raise the bar for
okay. I am installing a mute button on this thing. Some cars you install an ejection seat. I need a mute button. I can put it right there. I got space on the board.
They're gonna start installing actual physical water limiters. So hey, maybe you'll actually get off your butt and do some muting.
I'll install
You've been trending it for a long time.
I'll install a guest limiter or a host limiter, a co-host limiter. Just like. It's like, I think we're going to turn the volume down on the external mic just a little bit. All right. Thank you all for joining us, and we will catch up with you later. Have a good night, all.
Good night.